Part 307. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3068. Several people were stunned, unable to speak. No one has ever said that, it's just that everyone is accustomed to think so. You can get the same result at the least cost. Why should you take the initiative to pay such a large price? Bai Shan seemed to know what they were thinking, saying, building roads and water conservancy projects is not the result, making it valuable, and benefiting the people is the result. So our final result is to benefit the people. In the process of implementation, we go against our desired outcome. Several people suddenly realized, only yin or a calm expression, but other counties do not have this ability, or they think that these materials can do more things, instead of putting them on the servants. Bai Shan glanced at him approvingly, so in order to unify the service standards all over the world, not only the public's consent is required, but also a lot of resources are required. He said, when the land is limited and the population is increasing, there is only one way to get enough resources. Increase the yield. Bai Shan looked at yin or the field in the distance. Seeds, tools, farming methods, and the production of fertilizers can all affect the yield of grain. Only when there is enough food in the world can they use people to do more things. Bai Shan has realized that people cannot be bound by the land, otherwise they will not be able to do many things. For example, in the construction of the wharf, half of the people who build the wharf in Longqi are selected from long-term workers from other places, and the rest are recruited from the local area. Now is the slack time for farming, so there are still many people working in Longqi, but when the spring comes next year, I am afraid that the preparation for spring plowing will start, and the number of people will be less than half. Because they need to go back to farming. So he had to find a way to bring people out of the land, so that he, and officials like him in the world, would be available. It's not easy for him to talk to Mr. Fang Xiancheng, Mr. Kui, so he changed the subject after only one sentence, and smiled with Bai Erlang. So when we were young, we were very simple, and we took many things for granted. We think about the hard work of the servants, and they don't eat much, and they are more efficient when they eat, and wonder why the magistrate Fu is not better for them. Bai Shan laughed at himself. At that time, they were still. I swear, when I grow up, if I have the ability to meet His Majesty, I must talk about it seriously. But after seeing the Emperor, there is always something more important than this, and when nothing happens, Bai Shan can think more, knowing that this matter cannot be solved by complaining. Saying it out is just to attract people's attention, making people feel that they are too impetuous and naive. It wasn't until he became a county magistrate that Bai Shan did so himself and got the data he wanted. Only then did he have the confidence to talk to the Emperor about being a good servant. But this only brought this matter to the forefront. To be like what they thought when they were young, let the servants no longer be afraid to serve. They will not be injured or killed when they go to serve, and they will not starve, freeze, or wear out. There is enough food to eat, warm clothes to wear, reasonable working hours and intensity, and medical treatment when you are sick. There is still a long, long way to go to achieve this. Bai Shan can see the sunset reflected in the sky as soon as he looks up, can't help but smile, and Bai Erlang Yin said, although what I thought when I was a child was really naive, when it comes to I can't do it now, but I still hope that in the future, I can keep my original intention and keep going down. He reached out and patted Bai Erlang and asked him, how about you? Obsessed with reading miscellaneous books, Bai Erlang, who wrote the storybook, finally remembered the catastrophic experience in his childhood. He said with tears in his eyes, then when Mingda gives birth to a child, My Majesty, and I want a county magistrate. Seeing the aggrieved look on his face, Bai Shan couldn't help choking, you can do it if you want, and I don't force you to do it if you don't want to. Why do you force it? Bai Erlang, I think you're right. We didn't do what we wanted to do when we were young. Even now, I don't think what we thought when we were young was wrong. But, can I be a good county magistrate? And I don't seem to want to be a county magistrate. I can't let it go. How can I achieve those things? I can't help you just in the Hanlin Academy. Bai Shan patted him on the shoulder fiercely and said, who said that you can't help in the Hanlin Academy? Your Majesty asked you to write a book of words. I'm afraid, no, it's an Immortal's miscellaneous notes. Have you written it yet? He winked and said, if this miscellaneous note is written, it might be more effective than Joe Man and I go to the countryside every day. Bai Erlang held back his tears. I wrote a lot, do you want to read it? I'll show you the manuscript later. He paused and said, but you and Joe Man are only allowed to read it, not to change it. Mingda has read it and said that my writing is excellent. Bai Shan raised a heart and looked at him suspiciously. How did you write it? Was it written by an immortal? Bai Erlang squinted at him, and said coldly and arrogantly, it's still Wenkuxing and Tabaxing. They are a pair when they are in the sky, and they are a pair when they go down to earth. Do you think it's a coincidence? Bai Shan felt even worse in his heart. He was about to drag people into the woods to extort a confession, when Yin Or, who had been silent all the time, suddenly asked, why did you think so much when you were young? Bai Shan realizes that they are normal, and thinks when they meet each other. Besides, her husband has assigned homework. Isn't it normal for students to complete the homework assigned by her husband? Seeing Yin Or so surprised, he asked, then what were you thinking when you were a child? I feel that we are quite normal. This is all the homework assigned by Mr. Yin Or just pondered, is it really that he is abnormal? Yes, he was also different from ordinary children, so Yin he nodded and said, I'm so strange. He asked Bai Shan and Bai Erlang to forgive me, and explained, I used to study with my husband when I was young. It's normal for me to occasionally get sick and not see my husband for a month or two. Maybe my husband didn't have time to arrange these homework for me. He said, when I was a child, what I thought most about was life and death. On the side, Fang Xiancheng and Mr. Kui have froze into two stones, sitting expressionless and motionless, but they were happily complaining in their hearts, where is this normal? No one on both sides is normal, who didn't think about eating, drinking, and having fun when they were young? The biggest worry should be reading, right? What are the rights and interests of servants, what is life and death, who thinks about this kind of question when he was a child? Mr. Kui twisted his neck stiffly to look at Fang Xiancheng, so is this the reason why the two of them couldn't be admitted to the Jinqi and Mingjing? Fang Xiancheng turned his eyes away silently, not wanting to be classified in the same category as Mr. Kui, even though he was also thinking about eating, drinking, having fun, and worrying about reading when he was a child. Bai Shan sighed and said, you think more deeply than we do. I only think about life and death when I enter the capital. Yin Or asked him, have you figured it out? See you at 9. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3069. Think clearly. Bai Shan raised his chin slightly and said, although I want to live, people are inherently mortal. I only hope that I will live up to my conscience and live a frank and honest life. If I can't, I will die. Joe Man also thought so at the time, so the two of them came to the capital with high spirits, and then entered the palace. Although the enmity have gone away from them now, the key points that were figured out in their hearts at that time and the grand wishes they issued have not changed. He still hopes that he will live up to his conscience in the future and live a frank and open life. Bai Shan asked Yin He, what about you, do you understand? Yin Or smiled slightly and said, no. Bai Erlang turned to look at him, I didn't realize you were so happy. But it's no longer a problem for me, Yin He said, I don't regret coming here in this life, whether I live or die. He used to want to live, but more often he wanted to die. He felt that it was a sin to live, but he was reluctant to let him die, and he was very unwilling. He clearly came to this world as an adult, but he left before he had time to do anything. He had never been out of the capital, and the farthest place he had reached was Shiliting in the suburbs of Beijing. That was when he went to see his father off when he was a child. When he was about to die from illness, he dreamed of that scene back and forth in his dream. It was obviously a very ordinary road, a very ordinary roadside pavilion and trees, but he just kept thinking, constantly thinking. In the dream he was riding when he arrived, he left without looking back, leaving the capital, his family, and even himself behind. The person on the horse seems to be him, but it doesn't seem to be him. At that time, when he woke up from the dream, he was thinking, why is he still reluctant to die? It is so painful to live, but when you become an adult, you will die after leaving children, or die in such a humiliating way. Why can't you just die now? It took him a long time to figure it out, because he wanted to be the yin or who rode on a horse in his dream and left without looking back. Although he still has not been able to become that yin or, he still remains in the crowd, but he can really walk out of the 10-mile pavilion and down the long official road. He has been to the western regions, and now he has come to Qingzhou to see the sea. At this time, he is dead. Although he still regrets it, he will not be so unwilling. Bai Erlang looked at Yin Or, and then turned to look at Bai Shan. His eyes flashed at the smiles on their faces, so he snorted and turned his head to look at the sunset. He said, I don't want so much, as long as I am happy. Bai Shan gave him a warning look and said, don't scribble your immortal miscellaneous notes, or I won't care if you are happy or not. Bai Erlang was silent. After a long while, he suddenly jumped long, and ran out a long way before shouting at him, that's my book, you can't change my manuscript. Bai Shan. Yin or Puchi burst out laughing, and Bai Shan couldn't help asking him, have you read his manuscript? Yin he shook his head, I'm watching Journey to the West, but I haven't seen any miscellaneous records of immortals. Bai Shan raised his eyebrows and decided to go back and ask Bai Erlang for a manuscript. They were stationed here at night, and the servants slept in the thatched hut and were very uneasy. We won't be caught and sent to jail, right? No, no, isn't it already digging up the road and rebuilding it? Everyone else has gone back, so we are the only ones left. Who's to blame? It's not that you cut corners. If it weren't for the poor road you built, could we have been left by the adults to rebuild? Fart, do you think you can get away? I went out to dig mud, how did I know you guys built roads like this? Anyway, none of you can run away. Think about how much less soil you dug before, it's all on your shoulders. The other people living in the house panicked, turned over uneasily, and asked, are we really going to get caught and go to jail? It's also possible that they will be exiled. The offenders are either going to jail or exile, right? One person said, General, we can't be chopped up just because we haven't built the road, right? Don't be scary, I think the county magistrate treats us very well. I served for 5 years, and this is the first time I can eat enough while serving. Yes, the county magistrate doesn't look like a bad person. I didn't say that the county magistrate is a bad person. Isn't the bad guy us now? Isn't it just right for the county magistrate to deal with the bad guy? Someone said in the dark, I just thought that we did bad things, and we can still die. He said, although the county magistrate is good to the servants, he is also cruel to the bandits. Those in dying village before, those who were beheaded, and those who were exiled, were not all caught and left without a single one. Then, what shall we do? Bai Shan yawned, blew out the candles, and lay down on the creaking wooden bed in his clothes, saying to the two of them, stop talking, go to sleep. Bai Erlang asked, when are we going back? I think Mingda. Bai Shan put his hands behind his head and sighed, do you think I don't want to go home? Seeing how lazy they are today, it is estimated that they will need to be repaired until the day after tomorrow. We will leave when we deal with them. He paused and said, otherwise you will go back tomorrow. He thought it was a good idea, and he said, "It's fine if you go back, just to help them." Bai Erlang, are you helping Joe man? Bai Shan gave him an elbow. Respect, that's your senior sister. Bai Erlang couldn't help sitting up from the bed. That's my younger brother and sister. Stop bullying me, I won't go back. If I go back alone, they will definitely talk about me, thinking I'm lazy. He wanted to be wise, but that didn't mean he was willing to go back and be scolded. Bai Shan felt that he was lazy again, so he wanted to talk to him about reason. Yin Or smiled and persuaded him. He was about to pull the two away when a loud shout came from outside the house, "What do you want?" The three people in the room froze, looked at each other in the dark, and got out of bed immediately. The violent shouts of the guards kept coming from outside the house. "Bold, adults are resting here, why don't you retreat?" Bai Shan grabbed Yin Or, turned his head and said to Bai Erlang, "You stay here with Yin Or." In the moonlight, his expression could not be seen clearly, but Bai Erlang still nodded, then stretched out his hand to grab Yin Or firmly, and said to him, "Let him go, his kung fu is better than ours, and he also talks to Ji Yan. I have learned the stick technique, and now I have a lot of strength, and hitting someone is especially painful." Bai Shan has already opened the door to go out. Fang Xiancheng and Mr. Kui, who lived next door, also hurriedly put on their clothes and came out. Seeing so many people gathered in front of the thatched cottage, they immediately shouted angrily, "What are you doing here in the middle of the night? Why don't you go away? See you at 11 o'clock. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3070. A guard lit a torch to illuminate the people who came, and found that there were about 30 people, equivalent to most of the servants here. Bai Shan pushed aside the guards standing in front of him and stepped forward to look at them. "What are you doing here late at night? There has been a bit of noise, you push me, I push you, and there is a lot of discussion." The crowd that no one came forward to speak suddenly became silent. After a few people in the front hesitated for a while, they simply thumped and knelt on the ground. "Please. Lord, please forgive me." One of them knelt down, and the dozens of people behind them didn't even think about it. They knelt down to the ground, no matter whether the ground was soil or stone, and kowtowed, "Sir, please forgive me. Bai Shan." The guards and Yaman also fell silent, and turned to look at Bai Shan, but the hand holding the handle of the knife did not loosen. Bai Shan stepped forward and said, "Speak slowly if you have something to say." Everyone did not stop, but became even more eager, shouting in a loud voice, please forgive me, we don't dare any more." Bai Shan was rushed by the noisy voice, and his anger rose up. In a fit of anger, he shouted angrily without waiting for the person behind him to step up to replace him, "This county tells you to shut up." The crowd suddenly fell silent, and the people who kept kowtow raised their heads in fear, looking at Bai Shan with some fear. Bai Shan's face was extremely ugly, and the backlog of anger since he checked out the problem yesterday afternoon has suddenly erupted. "Do you not understand the words, or do you not want to listen to the county? If you don't want to listen to what this county has to say, go back to where you came from. You don't have to kneel in front of this county, if you don't understand." Bai Shan's face became darker, and his voice became a little gloomy. "This county doesn't find it difficult to speak. I understand, it seems that you still don't want to listen." The servants were startled, and most of them didn't dare to speak, and the few kneeling in front quickly said, "My lord, forgive me, there are too many people, the little ones didn't hear you, it's not that they don't want to listen." Bai Shan sneered, each of them understood the truth, and he tilted his head slightly to look behind him. However, the guards were not lucky, and no one could understand what he meant, but Bai Erlang, who was lying at the door and looking out, saw him tilting his head behind him. He immediately reacted, went back to the room and took a chair and sent it out. Bai Erlang put the chair behind Bai Shan. Bai Shan glanced at him, then lifted up his robe and sat down. There were more and more torches lit around, and he could see the kneeling people more clearly. He looked condescendingly at the group of people kneeling, and asked blankly, "After all, let this county spare you what?" The servants were silent for a while. Bai Shan suddenly slapped the chair fiercely, and asked angrily, "Why, you forced yourself to the door of this county in the middle of the night just to scream." The pressure of the servant Ding who was kneeling in front of Bai Shan's face was increased, and cold sweat fell on his forehead. Several people swallowed and had to say instead of everyone, "Sir, we know we are wrong, and we will not dare to cut corners in the future, please forgive me." Please forgive me." Bai Shan looked at them coldly, his eyes slid over their faces one by one. He had a good memory and quickly associated their faces with their names. "Shen Dagon? You rolled the stone." The person kneeling in front of him was stunned for a moment and then replied yes, with a bad premonition in his heart. Bai Shan called out the names of several people in succession and asked, "Are you all made of stone?" Those people were also very uneasy. I didn't expect Bai Shan to remember their names. Several people nodded nervously and said yes. Bai Shan's eyes moved to the side, and he named a few more people's names, and asked, "Are you picking soil?" "Yes." The kneeling person was even more uneasy. Bai Shan sneered and said, "Originally, the county planned to punish you 60 people to serve in the official field for 10 days, with wages in lieu of punishment, but today the county has changed its mind, and you all go to Longqi to build a fairy well. 60 people will be fined 20 days to work, and those who come to disturb the officials tonight and kneel here will receive another 20 days. The kneeling person was frightened, and quickly shouted, "Sir, you can't do this." Those who were excited even stood up and rushed forward to talk to Bai Shan. A guard immediately drew out a knife and placed it in front of Bai Shan, shouting, "Bold, do you want to rebel?" The murderous aura came, and the crowd suddenly fell silent, not daring to look directly at the guard and the broadsword in his hand. Bai Shan said slowly, "This is the cold guard of the Princess Mansion. He was born in the Imperial Guard, and there are people who collide with the concubine. He has the right to behead people under the horse." The person standing in front couldn't help but take 2 steps back, and the one who wanted to rush up to intercede even took a few steps back, not daring to go forward. Seeing that they were honest, Bai Shan looked at them quietly without any expression on his face. As time passed, the servants subconsciously avoided Bai Shan's gaze, and looked down at the irregular soil under their feet. "Doesn't it mean that there are too many people, so the county magistrate will not punish them?" Bai Shan looked down at all the servants before he said solemnly, "It is a serious crime to disturb the officials in the middle of the night. This county will punish you according to the law. If you don't accept it, then continue to make trouble here. This county doesn't mind if you raise the crime to secretly assassinating officials. Anyway, this county has killed a lot of people this year, and it's okay to send a few heads to the vegetable market." The servants were frightened away. Even the ones who were standing at the front, consciously more courageous, all turned pale, fighting with each other, and finally ran off with shaking legs. Fang Xiancheng breathed a sigh of relief, and said to Bai Shan, "Fortunately, they were just begging for mercy, and they didn't want to hurt the adults. Otherwise, the lower officials would be to blame." "However," Mr. Kui said, "it is also fortunate that we have brought enough guards and officers. Originally, they were just a few groups of people, because they wanted to go back to the county seat, and this was the only way to go, so they were destined to meet here." Before, Bai Shan went out with not only the yamen, but also 3 family guards. Bai Erlang also brought 2 yamen and several guards. Not to mention yin or even more, he would never travel with less than 10 people each time, so they had quite a few guards. Fang Xiancheng exhaled and hurriedly appeased Bai Shan, "Sir, go back to the house to rest first, and I'll give them a lesson tomorrow." Bai Shan asked, "Why tomorrow? What?" Bai Shan turned his head directly to the yamen and guards and said, "Go, knock on the bangzi, call all the servants up, and go to the flat ground where the food is placed in front of you. The county will teach you a lesson." He sneered, "Since everyone is not sleepy, then don't sleep tonight." Yin He also recovered, and had the energy to joke with him, "Are you going to be a strict county magistrate?" Bai Shan said with a sullen face, "I think Fang Xiancheng is right. Some people who make trouble do not know what to do if they don't punish them severely, and they are not enough to set an example. In this case, he fulfilled them. Scare him, but also to pay the price. What do you say begging for mercy?" In the middle of the night, so many people came to the door, not so much as begging for mercy, but as persecution. I really thought that he was a muddy man, so he wouldn't have a temper, right? See you tomorrow. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3071. The servants hurried back to their residences, but instead of lying down to sleep immediately, they still gathered together. They were hit hard tonight, and their hearts were still beating at the moment, which was very uncomfortable. As a result, they just got together, and before they had time to discuss a few words, a bang-bang suddenly sounded outside. The servants who came back from a fight tonight were uneasy and had to go out of the house. The yamen and guards stood guard by the hilt of the sword. They seemed to be scattered, but they firmly held all the openings. Seeing them come out, the yamen immediately ordered, "What are you doing? Go and bring the firewood over there, and set up 2 fires here and there, don't hurry up." The fire was raised, and the torches lit around it instantly illuminated this picture as bright as day. The 60 people who were called up, not to mention the expressions on their faces, were at least visible. Bai Shan brought Bai Erlang and Yin Or forward, but at this moment they were not afraid that these servants would rebel again. Since they didn't dare to move just now, they don't dare even more at this time. Bai Shan's courage has been frightened, okay. Bai Shan has a very good memory, not to mention that there are guards and yamen by his side. When the 60 servants stand up, he doesn't pick, and points directly to the side. The 34 people who have just arrived outside the house in this county stand by themselves. "Come this way." Everyone dawdled and refused to move, and Bai Shan looked at them quietly. Fang Xiancheng shouted, "Think you don't know who the adults are if you don't stand up?" Just now, the adults can name them one by one. It was only then that everyone remembered, and they were even more panicked. They lowered their heads and secretly exchanged expressions with the people next to them, but they could only move to the side. They were all remorseful in their hearts at this time. They had known that this would happen, they should not have listened to their commotion at that time, and there was nothing wrong with lying in the room honestly. When they all stood over, Fang Xiancheng stepped forward to count, checked the faces by the way, and came back after a while and said to Bai Shan, "It's all right." Only then did Bai Shan speak to them with a cold face. Since the order was issued on September 20th, the county has issued a total of 2 orders, a total of 1,868 people before and after the conscription, and the fortifications built. I dare not say that there is no problem at all, but like you, the horses in this county can see that the ground is not firm enough and the quality is poor, only you are here. The other 40 soldiers who were recruited in the same mile as you, returned home from service the day before yesterday. Because of the same mile with you, the county also checked it carefully, but there was no problem with the road section they built. Bai Shan said, "So this county thinks, is it you who have been cheating and playing tricks on your own, or have you learned a bad ethos after you got here?" The yamen in charge of this group of clerks broke out in cold sweat and knelt down one after another, not daring to say a word. Bai Shan glanced at them coldly, but didn't say anything to call them up. As the responsible yamen, they not only have to ensure the food and safety of the servants during their service, but also the quality of their service. The last section cut corners like this. Next year, when it rains, and there are more cars and horses passing by, the road will be full of potholes again in less than 2 years. Is it really just a mouth for the county government to build roads? If you have such a problem, you are at fault, but the yamen in charge of supervising you are also guilty. Originally, this county did not want to impose punishment when you rebuilt, but since you are so impatient, this county does not mind the sentence at this time. The servants all bowed their heads. Bai Shan's face was gloomy and serious, his eyes slid across their faces like knives one by one, and said, "You are all citizens of this county. As for me, I have seen the hardships of the servants when I was a child, so this time I only served. It will be so different, not only to ensure that you are full, but also to try to ensure that you are not cold and not too tired. This county thinks it is good enough for you, and it is enough to feel sorry for you." Bai Shan said this slowly, but everyone present knew that he was angry, and the servants bowed their heads in shame. There are rewards for merits and punishments for mistakes. The county originally wanted to punish you for working in the official fields for 10 days. The county magistrate said that the punishment was light. "That's right," Bai Shan said, "so, all the slack workers this time will be fined 20 days after the road is repaired, and they will all go to Longqi to build the wharf. The 34 people who are making noise tonight will be fined 2 more. 10 days, a total of 40 days, when will you finish serving and when will you go back?" Bai Shan's gaze fell on the kneeling yamen with a cold expression. The yamen who supervises is guilty of the same crime and will be fined for 3 months and serve 40 days. This punishment was even heavier than that of the servants. The 3 yamen knelt on the ground, turned pale, but they did not dare to argue or shirk, and kowtowed. Even the yamen clerks admitted the punishment, and the clerks didn't dare to say a word. They all knelt down and said yes. Seeing that they were being honest, Bai Shan nodded slightly to Fang Xiancheng. Fang Xiancheng ordered the servants to retire. It is not allowed to gather and shout for no reason. If anyone commits another crime, it will not be as simple as punishment. After all the servants returned to their respective houses, Fang Xiancheng went to Bai Shan. "Sir, is this the case?" Although Fang Xiancheng loved the people, he did not just condone them. He asked him to say that if they dared to disturb the county magistrate in the middle of the night, even if they were just surrounded, it meant persecution and should be severely punished. But Bai Shan didn't like the punishment with sticks and sticks. If he wanted to achieve his goal, there were other more cost-effective punishments. He said, "I will find them tomorrow, and the county will see him in person." The servants hadn't slept well all night, and when they woke up the next morning, they were lethargic and had dark circles under their eyes, but they didn't dare to be lazy today. Their Lijhan came from the village soon after receiving the news. The servants were even more uneasy when they saw Lijhan. Sure enough, Li Zheng called them together when they were having lunch, and scolded them with hatred for not being still, and said angrily, "You will lose your old face, and you will bully the young master of the county, thinking that he's soft and easy to bully. Do you really think he's good-natured when he gives you delicious food?" Li Zheng said angrily. "That's because the county magistrate loves you mud-legged people. If he doesn't feel sorry for people, look at the people in Daying village and Xiaojing village. How many are you? 10 people. If they say they are cut, they will be exiled, and if they say they are exiled, they will be exiled. Have you seen his eyes blink? How dare you go over to besiege the county magistrate in the middle of the night? Your brains are stuffed with shit." Li Zheng scolded and directly took out the anger he received today on them, and only after scolding dryness did he say, "Today we are considered to be I'm all famous, my old face is gone, you don't want to have any face, this matter has been known to everyone. In order to prevent such a thing from happening again in the future, we still have to hang it on that announcement. See you at 10 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3072. The servants blushed, and some couldn't help but say, "How can you do this, my lord?" Li Zheng jumped his feet. "Why don't you think about it when you're lazy? How dare you be lazy when you change to the previous service? The Yaman's big whip won't kill you, and now the adults are good to you, but you are kicking your nose in the face." Li Zheng turned over the words he scolded them before, and scolded them again, until his voice was hoarse before giving up. The servants' faces were flushed, and they lowered their heads and dared not say a word. Li Zheng finished scolding the talent and said, "My lord is kind, and after this road is repaired, I will allow you to go home for a half-day vacation to pick up your luggage, and then you will go to Longqi to serve." One person couldn't help but ask, "Lijhan, we served for 40 days, didn't we go back soon after the Chinese New Year?" Li Zheng raised his eyelids and said, "Why, do you still want to choose a date? So why don't you just choose the place where you will be punished? Or just not punish you?" No one dared to speak any more. Li Zheng looked at them with a sneer, "Conscientiously build the road. When you mend the road, you can watch." At this moment, although the servants felt ashamed, because everyone present committed the crime together, they did not feel very deeply. But Li Zheng's entire face was on fire, especially when he met Magistrate Bai and Fang Xiancheng just now. He wished there was a hole in the ground, and he could jump in and bury himself. At this time, although they were ashamed and bowed their heads, the emotions in their bodies were not much at first glance, and a few even felt like they were broken. Li is watching them sneer again and again. In fact, the section of the road they cut corners is not very long. It is less than 5 miles. It is the last few days. It is estimated that this time the service is not as hard as before. When people slack off, they become lazy. The Yaman didn't even pay attention and let them fool them. At this time, although the road has to be dug up and repaired, it is easier than the previous one. The bottom 2 layers are still well pressed. They only need to add a layer of stones, and then press 2 layers of soil to confirm that the foundation is solid. The time consuming is shorter than the first road construction time, but it also took 3 days before and after. Bai Shan stood on the road and kicked the soil under his feet with his feet. The Yaman next to him also checked with the tools and confirmed that the pressure was good. Then he nodded slightly, and said to the servants who were standing by the tools, "Yes. During your half-day leave, we will be waiting for you at the door of Lijhan's house when you apply for it, and if you are late for more than a quarter of an hour, you will be treated as a fugitive." Bai Shan didn't have the gentle smile that he faced them in the past few days, and said with a stern face, "Okay, let's go." Everyone hurried back to their residence, grabbed their packages and things, and ran towards home. No one dared to doubt Bai Shan's words again, and no one dared to escape from service. If the monk can escape, can the temple also run with long legs? Who is not a family living in the village? No one can run away for such a thing, and even half a day's effort can't run away. So Bai Shan can safely let them go home. Of course, he did not take the holiday this time because he felt sorry for them, but this time he went to Longqi. The weather will get colder and colder, they have to go back and get more clothes, shoes, and socks, otherwise they will be sick and unable to work when they arrive in Longqi. Not to mention that he has to spend money on medical treatment, thanks. In addition, it is also to let them feel the love of their family, so as not to do things without any scruples outside. Sure enough, when the servants ran home, they were greeted by fighting, cursing and crying. Most of the beatings were their grandfathers, who scolded them while beating them, "You have all thrown your face into the county seat, and who doesn't know that you are cheating and cheating even when you build a road? Let's see what your children will do in the future." Say dear. Most of the scolding people are the female elders of their family. If you used to save energy when you served in the military, everyone knows that serving is hard, you know how to save energy, and it is your ability to save money, but this time serving in the county magistrate will only let you every day. I worked for 4 hours, and I deliberately staggered the time when the scorching sun was shining, and I gave you food and drink. You are cheating and playing tricks at this time. Do you know what people outside say about our family? Your sister, daughter, hasn't said it yet. Dear, you are trying to kill them. As for the crying, it was naturally their wife /sister /daughter. Just a headache. But this is not the hardest. The hardest is when you go out. Although you can only go home for half a day, because it is a slack season, most people in the village gather together to talk. They pointed and didn't know what to say, and made a sound of unknown meaning. The clan brothers who returned from serving with him in the village also came back, but at this time the two families could not share the enemy, and instead complained about each other. One said, "I don't know who you learned bad from. You were still diligent at home. How did you learn these bad habits?" One said, "It's not the first time for you to serve. I've never heard of you being lazy before. Why did you bring your cousin with you this year and become a leper when you come back?" Anyway, they didn't get comfort when they went home, but they felt more uncomfortable and irritable, so they might as well not come back. They only had time to take a shower, eat a simple meal, and leave with their repacked luggage. This time, I didn't have any instructions to go out. I only shouted angrily, "If you are lazy and do something again this time, don't come back. I really can't afford to lose this person." 60 servants, none of them missing, met in front of Lichhan's house on time. Seeing that his face improved slightly, Bai Shan said to Bai Erlang, "There is still help." Bai Erlang was enthusiastic, "Let's go, leave early, arrive at Longqi early." He wanted to go to the beach to see the sea, but at this time he didn't think about Mingda. The group turned to Longqi. Because it was far away, they stayed on the road for the night, and arrived at Longqi in the evening the next day. Longqi has changed a lot. Before, the place of the salt field was full of people, and the stove that was not disassembled was used for cooking, and it was not wasted. A lot of houses have been built on some vacant land near the salt works, all of which are simple thatched houses, and all the long-term workers who come to work here live. The servants come over and choose a house to live in. When they arrived, the long-term workers and craftsmen had just finished their work and were queuing up with their rice bowls to make rice. Seeing so many people suddenly coming, everyone turned their heads and glanced at them, but it was only a glance, and they turned their eyes away after confirming that they were all here to work. Bai Shan had already asked Mr. Kui to go back, and only brought Fang Xiancheng here. This was the first time Fang Xiancheng came to Longqi since Bai Shan took office, and he was shocked. This was not the Longqi he was familiar with before. Bai Shan threw the servant Ding to him, and took Bai Erlang and Yin Or to find Lord Kui. "Master Kui is on the dock." Bai Shan then pulled the horse over and mounted it. Seeing Yin Or standing, he asked with a smile, "Would you like to ride a horse or ride a car?" Yin Or was very moved, hesitated for a moment, turned his head and said to Chang Shao, "Go and lead the horse. See you at 11:30. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3073. Chang Shao looked at Yin Or silently. Yin Or also looked at him silently. Bai Shan He Chang Shao said, "Bring it here, it's not far away." Yin may also be able to ride a horse, but he is only average and rarely rides. Although he did not study it specifically, when he took horseback and archery lessons in Kuazijian and Chongguan Hall, he often watched teachers teach students, so he was very rich in theoretical knowledge. Moreover, he often rides his father's horse into the palace. When traveling west, he occasionally rides on it. Well, although most of the time he runs slowly for a while, or Chang Shao leads his horse to walk slowly, but it is undeniable that he will on horseback. Therefore, he was a little unhappy about Chang Xiao's disobedient behavior. Chang Xiao said, "Young master, it's windy at the seaside, and it's cold at the moment. It will be colder to ride on a horse. What if I catch a cold?" Yin Or was more moved. "It's only comfortable to ride a horse when the wind is strong." Bai Shan and Bai Erlang turned to look at him when they heard the words, and felt that his cognition and hobby were too special, and they were very different from them. However, thinking that he rarely runs fast on his own horse, let alone in the wind, he decided not to argue with them on this matter. Chang Xiao had no choice but to bring Yin or a horse over. Yin probably got on the horse, but he didn't run too fast, so he walked around with Bai Shan and Bai Er to find Lord Kui. Kui Wei is not on the dock under construction, but on the seaside ahead. Bai Shan and the others looked for him and saw that he was squatting on the ground, holding a wooden board in his hand, with a piece of white paper sandwiched on the wooden board, on which he was writing and drawing with a pen. Bai Shan dismounted and looked for him. Without disturbing him, he also stopped the long attendant who wanted to call him, walked behind him and glanced at the drawing board, and couldn't help but be stunned. This is not a wharf. No, it should be said that this is not just a wharf, but includes construction near the wharf. Although Bai Shan wanted to build a nearby building, he never thought that he would have to trouble Kui Wei to design it, for fear that it would take up too much energy from him and affect the construction of the wharf. Bai Shan tilted his head to look seriously, and Bai Erlang, who quietly felt the sea breeze, saw that he had not said a word for a long time, and couldn't help but come up to peep together. Yin Or then also stepped forward. The three of them stood behind their heads and watched Kui Wei draw something. When only one person peeked, Kui Wei really didn't notice it, but he was stunned that there were three people standing behind him. No matter how serious he was, he would have noticed it. Kui Wei insisted on painting a place to be painted, and then raised his head and looked back at them. When their eyes met the three, they saw Bai Shan, who was standing in the middle, smiling instantly, took a step back and bowed. "Mr. Kui has worked hard." Yin He and Bai Erlang also stepped back and said, "Hello, Master Kui." Kui Wei wanted to stand up and return the salute, but he found that he might have been squatting for too long. His feet were numb, and his heart ached when he moved. He just lifted it up and couldn't move. Bai Shan's eyes were sharp, and when he swayed, he stepped forward to support him, and said with concern, "Master Kui, take care of your health." Master Kui held Bai Shan's hand and stood up straight slowly. Not only his feet were numb and painful, but there were some double images in front of him, and even people were blurred. Seeing that he didn't answer, Bai Shan couldn't help but look at his face carefully. Yin Wei knew at a glance that he was dizzy, so he said, "Give him some sour plum juice." He remembered someone shaking at the medical office last time. When he was about to faint, Zhou Man gave him sour plum soup. Bai Erlang, he's not suffering from heat stroke, right? Drinking sour plum juice is helpful? And where can I find sour plum soup for him now? Yin Or, then eat some sugar water, or salt water. Bai Shan had already turned his head and called for the guards, asking him to bring the cloth bag hanging on Thief Li's body. The guard immediately fetched the cloth bag, and Mr. Kui's long attendant and Bai Shan helped him to the side, Yin Or the cloak he was wearing next, and let Bai Erlang spread it on the ground. Bai Shan helped Lord Kui to sit down, took the cloth bag and turned it over. He quickly took out a bottle, glanced at the words written on it, and after confirming that he had taken it correctly, he poured out a pill and stuffed it into Lord Kui's mouth. Chen Sui opened the water bag anxiously, and was about to feed Lord Kui some water, but was stopped by Bai Shan. "This medicine is taken by mouth." The medicine began to melt as soon as he entered the mouth. Master Kui swallowed his saliva. It was sweet, and there was still a medicinal smell. The sweetness was refreshing. "It's blurry, and it doesn't shake anymore, so people can see it clearly." Master Kui said slowly, "I'm sorry, I also asked the concubine and Master Bai to forgive me. The three quickly said it was okay. Sitting together on the cloak and waiting for Master Kui to relax, Bai Shan saw that he was about to open his mouth to speak, so he hurriedly said, "You don't talk, don't think about other things, just let your mind rest for a while." He said, "You are overworked, by the way, have you eaten lunch?" After he asked, he went to see Chang Sui, and Chang Sui immediately said, "I ate, but only a little." Chen Sui took advantage of the situation and complained, "Our master is not used to kings whose food." Bai Shan sighed as soon as he heard it, "I didn't think about it carefully, I'll find a cook from the capital or king he when I look back." He asked caringly, "Can we have refreshments in the afternoon?" Long Sui, "No." Bai Shan sighed again, "It's no wonder that when I saw Lord Kui today, Lord Kui is a lot haggard." Kui Wei put the medicine in his mouth, and the person also slowed down and asked, "Master Bai is here to see the progress of the project." Bai Shan smiled and nodded, "Send some servants here by the way. Kui Wei really needs people right now, and when he hears this, he will get up, then let's go take a look." Bai Shan immediately stretched out his hand to support him and said with a smile, "It's just a laborer who does rough work, and there are no usable craftsmen in there." Kui Wei sighed, "Master Bai still hasn't found a useful craftsman." Bai Shan also sighed. He found all the craftsmen that Bihai County could find. He also went to the governor of Guo and asked for a lot of craftsmen that the governor could call in the governor's house. Even the county magistrate lent him in the face of being an ally some people, but still not enough. Bai Shandao, I have sent a letter to the Ministry of Industry, but I haven't replied yet. Kui Wei lifted his eyelids and glanced at him, and asked, "How long has it been since you wrote the letter?" Bai Shan, "There's more than 1 month left." Kui Wei said, "Then continue to wait, maybe there will be a reply next year." Bai Shan brought the topic to the pier, "I think the pier has a prototype, maybe it will be used next year." Kui Wei said, "If there is no problem in receiving and releasing small and medium-sized ships, the large ones will not, and the number that can be received and released is limited. What Bai Shan and the prince are most worried about now is the transportation of official salt, so as long as small and medium-sized sea ships can go out from here, as for the others, he can't think about it for the time being. But construction beyond the docks. I think Master Kui also designed the construction of nearby houses." Kui Wei said, "There is a wharf. When the sea ships come, there will be merchants and part-time workers. There will definitely be a large gathering nearby. Don't the adults plan to build a town near here? He is not blind and stupid." Bai Shan smiled slightly and said, "It is indeed going to be built, but I don't plan to do it myself. See you tomorrow." Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3074. This is not the only blueprint that Kui Wei designed, and what Bai Shan sees now is only a corner of it. After he was brought back to his residence, he took Bai Shan to his study with only a sip of tea. From the study, he took out 7 or 8 drawings, each half the size of a table, and spread them out for Bai Shan. "Look. Some were rough and some were detailed." He picked out 3 and put them together for Bai Shan to see. Because the table was not big enough, he asked someone to take a piece of cloth and spread it on the ground, then put the drawings on it, open the doors and windows, and let in the sunlight. This drawing is like a beautiful picture scroll, with docks, houses, and streets lined up in rows, very orderly and symmetrical, and even the courtyard built by Bai Erlang is marked in it. Bai Shan fell in love just at a glance. Yes, this is exactly the Longqi pier he envisioned, and it is more orderly than the Leizhu pier. Bai Shan got excited and asked, "Master Kui has estimated how long it will take to build this pier." Kui Wei looked up at him and said, "At the current speed, it will take at least 10 years. Bai Shan's blood became cold. Kui Wei was used to it, and said indifferently, "So I just drew this drawing, Adults don't necessarily need to build it according to it, but it is impossible to save money here without a transition. Bai Shan touched his chin and asked, "Is Mr. Kui afraid that I have no money?" Master Kui said and asked with some expectation, "Is there enough money for Master Bai?" Not enough. Bai Shan glanced at the house and street on the drawing and shook his head decisively. Even if the salt works made more money, it would be difficult to gather so much money in a short period of time to build a house, not to mention a wharf. The wood, stone, and craftsman's craftsmanship needed there are not cheap. Master Kui's heart cooled down, and his eyes fell on his drawings again. What did he say when he had no money? Bai Shan touched his chin and said, "Money or something has never been the most important thing, the most important thing is people. Money, there is no other way to think about it, he has a way to let people build the house, but the manpower and craftsmen needed to build the wharf." Bai Shan looked at Kui Wei and said, "Master Kui, you have been in the Ministry of Industry for many years, so you can't let me go through the back door." Kui Wei ignored him. Bai Shan surrounded him and persuaded, "Your drawing is so well designed, what a pity if it can't be realized." He said, "If the Longqi Wharf is really built according to your idea, as long as it takes 100 years, not only the people of this party, but the whole world will be able to remember Mr. Kui in the future. This is an achievement that will go down in history." Kui Wei is not an ordinary Ministry of Industry official, but he was born in the Kui family. As a literati from an aristocratic family, he has a different kind of affection for his fame and history. When there is no chance, Kui Wei is willing to do what he loves wholeheartedly. It is a huge temptation to not only do what you love, but also to have the opportunity to be famous through the ages with your favorite business. Kui Wei thought. Bai Shan looked at him eagerly. Kui Wei lifted his eyelids to look at him, with a suspicious look on his face. "Master Bai has no money, so what's the use of just asking for someone?" "I found someone, can you afford it?" Bai Shan immediately said, "There is still money to support people." Kui Wei lowered his eyes and thought for a moment, then said, "Building a wharf alone is not a great achievement. If the houses behind the wharf are messy and disorderly, what is the difference between them and other wharfs?" Bai Shan assured, "Don't worry, sir, you can build the pier with confidence and boldness. Leave the rest to me, and I will definitely make the houses and streets behind the pier built according to your drawings." Kui Wei narrowed his eyes and stared at him. "Really? Really?" Kui Wei thought about it. In fact, he still has some people in his hands. After all, he has been in the Ministry of Works for many years. Although he is a bit withdrawn, he also has some master craftsmen who are familiar with each other. The master craftsmen have a group of small craftsmen under them, and he is also a little thin in the Ministry of Works. If he asks, Han Shangshi should dispatch some people to him. Kui Wei thought for a while and said, "I heard that Lord Zhou delivered the baby of Han Shangshi's little lady before, and took the child from his belly to save the mother and son. If she intercedes, Lord Bai just wants to call more craftsmen here." Impossible. Kui Wei is withdrawn, but his background is there, and his IQ is also there. He is still very flexible, it all depends on whether he wants to. Bai Shan looked at him quietly. "Sir Kui is really thoughtful, what else?" Kui Wei smiled and said, "I can call some people, and Lord Zhou intercedes. If Han Shangshu is willing to raise his hand, the number of people who come will be almost the same. If it is worse, I will transfer some more from home." "That is." Bai Shan rolled his eyes, "From the Kui clan." Kui Wei, "Sir Bai thinks beautifully, but someone Kui doesn't have that ability. If it is his home, it is his own home. From the Kui clan, he doesn't have the ability to transfer craftsmen, and he will not have it in his entire life in the future. Because he was addicted to fortifications and arithmetic, the clan elders in the family thought that he had corrupted the style of the family, and the branch he belonged to was excluded. Although it would not be lost, it was difficult to speak in the family. Fortunately, his brother also thought about it, and didn't blame him, let him mess around outside. Also because Kui Wei likes fortifications, when he was young, before he was absurd enough to let the family give up on him, he bought a lot of craftsmen and raised them in his own village, and also exchanged some craftsmen with some people in the clan. In my own village. Kui Wei decided to write back and ask his brother to send them too. Bai Shan got an approximate number of people and was overjoyed, so he began to rummage in his own home. However, the number of craftsmen in his family was limited, so there were only a few. Except for a few who were good at building houses, there were the most carpenters. Bai Shan sighed, there are too few people, it is better to find ready-made people to train them. There were only 2 small villages near the Longqi salt field, and it was very lively at this time. After Bai Shan shut down the salt works, they had a hard time for a while, but they got better soon. First, Bai Shan needs a lot of workers to build a wharf here. At first, they thought that building a wharf was harder than boiling salt, but after getting used to it, they found that they were almost the same, and the wages for building a wharf were higher than cooking salt. Second, there are more and more craftsmen coming here, and people need to eat and drink. Although the grain and vegetables and meat in the construction site are delivered from the official fields outside every day, occasionally when there are not enough vegetables, the large kitchen of the construction site will also buy with them. In addition to food and drink, there will be other expenses, such as wear and tear of shoes, clothes, socks, etc. A group of big men can't mend, and the women in the village can make some money by making some needles and threads. In total, the life is better than when there was a salt field. Be good. They were very happy, but they didn't know that Bai Shan was standing under the hillside looking at their site, and said to Bai Erlang, their house has to be pushed up and rebuilt. See you at 7 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3075. Bai Erlang, you want to buy their house and land. Bai Shan checked the blueprint in his hand and shook his head, I don't have any money, I'll go back and find a way for them to rebuild according to our blueprint. But it's not urgent, Bai Shan just kept it in his mind, and the top priority is to build the wharf. The newly arrived servants obeyed the steward's assignment and carried the logs into the water to build the building. The weather was so cold that they shivered. This is not the most tormenting thing, the most tormenting thing is that every 3 days, the long-term workers here can queue up to receive their wages. They are the only ones who have nothing and can only watch. For building a wharf, even the most common long-term workers have 30 yuan a day, and those who need to go into the water, or those who have craftsmanship, pay more, ranging from 50 to 100 yuan. They were obviously working for 50 cents a day, but they didn't get a single cent. The servants did not dare to be lazy, for fear of being punished more for being lazy, so they worked hard while sniffling with heartache. Because of the slack of farming, the long-term workers who were placed in various official fields were also successively transferred to build the wharf together. Just for their health, Bai Shan would let them return to the official fields to rest in rotation. A group of 3 people have been staying at the dock, planning daily how to maximize the use of the people and things in their hands. If Dong Xianwei hadn't sent someone to find Bai Shan, he could have stayed here until the initial construction of the wharf. Guo inspector summoned all the magistrates and said that he wanted to discuss major events for next year. Bai Shan had to go back. As soon as he was about to leave, Bai Erlang was naturally unwilling to stay, so he took in or wanted to go back to the county together. In the end, Fang Xiancheng could only stay behind to help Lord Kui. Zhou Man's belly is already very big, but she is in super good spirits. Except for the edema of her hands and feet and some inconvenience in movement, she has no discomfort. Recently, I even went to Qingzhou City to do a free clinic. On the other hand, Mingda is tired. The bigger the stomach, the more uncomfortable the body is. Sometimes, just standing for a while, the back hurts, but it is uncomfortable to sit or lie down, and the temper is a little bad. As soon as Bai Erlang came back, she turned her head to the side, and when he was around, she got up and supported her stomach and the maid to go home first. Bai Erlang touched his head in confusion, turned his head and asked Zhou Man, "What's wrong with Mingda?" "Zhou Mandao, if you don't come back to take care of Mingda, she is angry, you can coax her to go." "Bai Erlang, didn't you guys let me go out to work?" He was reluctant to go out at first, and he was still the one who was trained by Ming Daixun. How could he turn around and become his again? Zhou Man lifted his eyelids to look at him. "Are you going to leave Mingda alone and continue to discuss with me the right and wrong of this matter?" Bai Erlang was shocked and immediately turned his head to chase Mingda. Bai Shan turned his head to look at her, and seeing her warm face, he couldn't help asking, "Then I won't come back to accompany you, aren't you angry?" "I'm not angry," Zhou Man said. "My body is better than Mingda's. Her pregnancy is much more uncomfortable than mine. She is physically and psychologically uncomfortable, so she is wronged. My feet are swollen and my waist is a little sore, but the rest is fine." Seeing that she was in good spirits, Bai Shan asked after a while, "So I'm not coming back?" "I'm quite comfortable," Zhou Man asked thoughtfully. "It's also very difficult on the Jiangnan side. Isn't the port going to open next year? If you're busy, you can actually live in Longqi. She can also do something else, it's really cool to have no one in charge." Bai Shan looked at her silently. Zhou Man lowered his head slightly in his eyes. "I thought about it, it's cold, I prepared knee pads for you, you wait, I'll show it to you." Bai Shan watched her go back to the house, and immediately asked Daji to ask, "What has she been up to recently, so she doesn't want me to come back?" Daji thought for a while and said, "I didn't do anything, I just received and sent a lot of letters, and there are a lot of doctors who have come to the medical office and my wife recently to ask for medical advice, and my wife has two little ladies by her side to teach me." He paused and said, "The Western cake was also put into the medical office by the lady, and now it is Julan who is by the lady's side the most. It seems that there are not enough staff in the medical department." Bai Shan looked at him suspiciously. "Anything else?" Daji shook his head, "At least what I saw, no more." Bai Shan turned around and went back to the house in confusion. In that case, why did Man Bao avoid him and didn't want him to go home? Zhou Man took out the knee pads and gave them to him, "Try them on. In winter, the seaside is windy and cold. You should bring them when you go to Longqi." Bai Shan hugged her knee pads and asked her, "There are many people in Longqi now, and there are often people who are cold and sick. Would you like to go there and show them their bodies?" "Okay," Zhou Man replied with a sigh, "you can choose a time." Bai Shan became more and more puzzled, but he didn't show it on his face, and said, "Next time I go to Longqi, we'll be together." Zhou Man asked, "When will you go next time?" "The 12th lunar month." Zhou Man looked confused. "It's not very good." "Why?" "There are many patients in the hospital." Bai Shan glanced at her face and said, "Oh, that's it, let's choose a time." Zhou Man nodded again and again. In the evening, after dinner, Bai Shan went to the study to deal with official documents, and by the way, he looked at the letters sent from various places recently. He and Man Bao never fortified each other, and their desks were leaning against each other. When Bai Shan was not at the county office, she would open his letters first, and send someone important to him to send to Longqi. Go, leave the unimportant, and she will reply to the letter or put it on the desk. Her own letters were naturally stuffed in the drawer too. After reading his own, Bai Shan looked at Zhou Man's desk, and when she saw that she was writing with her head down, she stepped forward to read the letters on her case. Zhou Man looked up at him. Maybe he was too used to it, he didn't take it to heart for a while, so he lowered his head and continued to write his own things. Bai Shan flipped through and found that many of Xiao Yuanzhen's letters were not mutual friends. He never read them, but there were too many. 6 out of 10 letters were from Xiao Yuanzheng. He lined them up and put them aside without looking at them. He turned down 2 letters from the prince, and then leaned on the desk and asked Zhou Man, "I have read the letter from your highness." Zhou Man responded involuntarily. Bai Shan opened the letter. The first letter to the prince was from the 2 of them. Man Bao mentioned this when he wrote to him. First, he told Bai Shan to prepare as much official salt as possible to deal with the subsequent Jiangnan shock. The second is to warn Zhou Man not to be in business, but he still spread the tree she was looking for and the news that he wanted him to pass. The second letter came recently and was entirely written to Zhou Man. The prince and Zhou Man asked for medicine. In addition to some potentially used wound medicines, there were also new medicines she made. And a lot of medicine. Bai Shan vaguely guessed what Man Bao was hiding from him, and turned to look at her. "You've been taking medicine recently." Huh. Zhou Man returned to his senses and immediately denied it. "No, I've been paying attention to rest recently, and I don't often take medicine." See you at 10 p.m. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3076. Bai Shan looked at her quietly. Zhou Man slowly lowered his head. "Actually, not often, just occasionally." Bai Shan asked, "Have you tested the medicine?" "The current test results are pretty good. The medicine sent to the border is still unknown, but she is closely connected with the capital. Now the capital has been tested several times, and the effect is good." Zhou Man paused for a while, but decided to explain honestly. "Xiao Yuanzheng and I have applied for 2 more students to come over as alchemy." She said, "I found that there are still too few medical offices in one state, and it is difficult to take care of counties far away from the state city, so I suggest that a state should have at least 3 medical offices. The prefecture's medical office ordered the product, and the county medical offices also issued the order, which is the same as the county's order." Bai Shan blinked and asked, "Do you have so many people available in your imperial physician's office?" The corners of her mouth curled slightly and said, "Not now, so I will dispatch it from other places first." Because Zhou Man is out of the place, in order to find the best way to the local medical office, the imperial medical office will give priority to meeting her requirements. Zhou Mandao, students graduate every year. In a few years, as more students graduate, the local medical office can be relaxed. Maybe in the future, we can open a medical office in every county. Bai Shan praised her. The ambition is good, but have the 3 provinces and the Ministry of Personnel and Household agreed? No, Zhou Man replied very succinctly. The Ministry of Personnel is worried that it will cause the bureaucracy to become redundant, and the Ministry of Household is worried that the expenditure will be too large. Zhongsha Province and Mengxia Province also have their own considerations. Anyway, they did not agree. Aren't you angry? I'm not angry. Zhou Man put down the pen, stood up on his waist, turned around in the room, and moved his muscles and bones. Anyway, Xiao Yuanzheng and I didn't think that this would be done right away, so let's bring it up first. As for her, the transfer of people is a matter within their imperial physician's office. For the time being, the approval of the 3 provinces is not required, so it will not affect her. Zhou Man smiled and said, "So there are still many advantages to outside. If you are in the capital, you have to apply for every move. Even if you don't need to apply, you will be stared at by the censors, and you will be very restricted." Bai Shan nodded her nose and smiled. "What if Xiao Yuanzheng didn't give you someone? You can only say that by relying on the imperial physician's office on your side." Zhou Man hummed and said, "Even if the imperial physician office doesn't give me someone, I can do it. The big deal is that I recruit doctors from the private sector." Bai Shan, "Where does the money come from?" Zhou Menyu thinks it is true, The local medical department spends a lot of money and basically does not make any money. If there is no support from the medical department, it will be difficult for her to maintain it. She immediately pulled away the chair and sat down. I remember that Xiao Yuanzhen's birthday is approaching. Well, I have to write a letter to him to congratulate him. What birthday gifts do you think we should give him? Relying on the imperial physician's office in Beijing, no matter what, he has to have a good relationship with Xiao Yuanzhen. Bai Shan. He rolled up his sleeves to grind ink for her, and thought while grinding, giving gifts, do whatever you want. Would you like to give him a medical book that he doesn't have? Zhou Man pondered, good idea. Keek has several medical books that she can take out, all of which she bought from the encyclopedia, and then pays a point for the encyclopedia to print and bind one. Zhou Man wrote to Xiao Yuanzhen to greet him. When it was getting dark, Bai Shan lit the lamp to illuminate her, then dried and sealed the letter she had written before returning to the house with her hand. Zibing and Julan had already prepared hot water, and served Zhou Man to take a bath first, and when she came out with her hair loose, Bai Shan went to take a bath. When he came out, all the servants in the room had already left. Zhou Man was leaning on the soft pillow, covered with a fox fur coat, looking at something in his hand. Bai Shan wiped his hair casually, then just draped over his hair and squeezed onto the couch to sit with her. He glanced at it and found that he couldn't understand it, so he asked, "What is this?" Zhou Man pondered, how to tell him that this is the formula for streptomycin that Mr. Mo found for her. But I haven't seen this thing, and she hasn't been tossing much recently, and she still can't make it, but she's more proficient in the production of penicillin. She's recently thinking about making other shapes of penicillin to change how it's used. Bai Shan also asked a question casually. Seeing that she seemed to be addicted to it, he didn't bother her. He directly took the person into his arms, pulled De Hui under her neck and pressed it well, so as not to let her get a little cold, and then he put his hand into her clothes and put it on her stomach, quietly feeling the ups and downs. He hugged her and closed his eyes, thinking that it would be good for a family of 3 to stay like this. Zhou Man moved, found a more comfortable position to lean on him, and continued to look at the things in his hands. I don't know how long it took. When there was a burst of lights outside, Zhou Man finally recovered, turned to look at Bai Shan behind him, and saw that he was already sleeping on the soft pillow, but he was still holding her with one hand, and the other hands on her belly. Zhou Man also felt sleepy. She put the manuscript in her hand into the space, hesitated between resting here and going to bed, but pushed the person awake. Let's go to bed and go to sleep. Bai Shan reluctantly opened his eyes, seeing that she was about to go to bed after opening De Hui, and was startled, and quickly pulled De Hui to wrap her up. Don't, what should I do if I catch a cold? He slightly pushed Zhou Man away from the bed, and then bent down to pick up the man and De Hui and put them back on the bed. Seeing that the quilt was cold, he turned to look for Mei. Bring 2 mrs tang. Mei hurriedly poured hot water and brought it over. Bai Shan hugged him onto the bed, put mrs tang behind her, and he hugged her whole body and put his feet on hers. Why are your feet colder than before? Is it because of pregnancy? Zhou Man nodded, yes. Bai Shan pulled up the trouser legs, then asked her to put her feet on his calf, and said with a smile, it's warmer this way. Zhou Man giggled and put both feet on his calf. Bai Shan touched her stomach with one hand and felt that the child seemed to kick his hand lightly. His whole heart trembled, and his eyes widened instantly. She seems to have kicked me. Zhou Man was sleepy. He found a good place to lie down in his arms, and replied confusedly, she must be angry because I was up late and disturbed her sleep. Bai Shan asked in a low voice while rubbing her stomach, is she so angry now? Zhou Man responded and said, the bigger you are, the bigger your temper will be. Bai Shan gently patted her back and said, then go to sleep, I'll coax you to sleep. As soon as it was quiet, Zhou Man quickly fell asleep. Bai Shan raised his head slightly and looked down at Zhou Man in his arms. Seeing that her mouth was slightly open and her face was red from sleep, she couldn't help but smile slightly and touched the bed. Make sure to sleep warmly before putting people on the pillow carefully. Bai Shan tucked her hair behind her ears and exhaled. Seeing her sleeping soundly, he felt a little guilty. He seems to be very busy lately, and she can't help her so much. Bai Shan turned sideways, put one hand on her waist, held her hand with the other, and fell into a deep sleep. See you tomorrow. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Zhu. Chapter 3078. When Zhou Man woke up, it was already bright outside, and Bai Shan had no idea where to go. She stretched herself comfortably, hugged the quilt and felt the warmth in the quilt. After hesitating for a while, she decided to stay in bed. But she slept well last night. Although she wanted to stay in bed, she was in good spirits. She stared at the tent with bright eyes. Bai Shan quietly opened the door, and looked at the bed with her head, and she met her eyes. Bai Shan. He immediately came in and asked, "Why don't you wake up?" "Zhou Man, it's a little cold outside." Bai Shan was punching. At this time, he was still warm and sweaty, so he said directly, "It's not cold at all." Zhou Man glanced at the clothes on his body, pulled down the quilt slightly, and immediately pulled the quilt over his neck after feeling the coldness, tucked his hands inside and said, "It's cold, you can't use your feelings to define the actual weather." Bai Shan, then are you going to lie in bed all day? Zhou Man, it's not too bad. When the sun rises a little bit, I feel warm again. Bai Shan glanced outside, the sun was already shining brightly outside, and when he thought of the precautions Zhou Man wrote to him, it was there. If she was lazy for a long time, refused to move, or refused to eat, she must be forced to implement. So he raised his head and gave her a slight smile, then took the big man on the shelf in his hand, lifted the quilt on her body, and in her exclamation, put the big man on top of her, and hugged him directly. "Get up and go outside." Zhou Man's eyes widened, and he patted him twice angrily, "What are you doing?" but he didn't dare to struggle. Bai Shan's shoulder hurt from being patted, and he hissed, "You hit it lightly." He put her on the couch in the outer room, and then shouted for Mei and Julan to come in. "Didn't you write a letter to tell me? He said that you've been getting lazy lately, you'll stay in bed, and sometimes you're obviously hungry. But you will feel that eating is a hassle, and you don't even want to eat, so let me stare at you, and don't allow you to be too lazy." Zhou Man finally remembered this, but he said sarcastically, "But I just don't want to get up today." Bai Shan sighed, "Yesterday, you said that Princess Da's reaction to being pregnant was big, but your reaction is not small when I come here. Has the child tossed you recently?" Zhou Man stepped on his feet and crushed him angrily, "Don't change the subject, take me back." She hadn't put on her shoes yet, so Bai Shan didn't feel any pain when she stepped on it, and he was afraid that her feet would freeze, so he hurriedly picked it up and tucked it into his arms. Mei and Julan pushed open the door and came in, holding a wooden basin and mouthwash in their hands. They were not surprised by the commotion between the two. One put the wooden basin on the shelf and went to look for Zhou Man's clothes today. He also put the tray on the shelf, and said, "Miss, today the eldest lady made a meat-filled bun, the skin is thin and the stuffing is big, I heard that there is still soup in it, the princess sent someone over to get a basket and returned it." With one cage left, the eldest lady asked if she would like to set aside some for young Master Yin. Zhou Man's attention was diverted, and after thinking about it, he said, "Go and invite him over here for breakfast. It's easy to get cold because of the trouble of sending it around." Julan responded, then bowed back and went out to spread the word. Mei took out the clothes, shoes, and socks that had been folded last night, and was about to serve Zhou Man to get dressed. Bai Shan waved his hand and said, "I'm coming, you go down." Mei smiled slightly, curtsied and stepped back. Bai Shan first squatted down and put on socks and shoes for her, and then took the clothes to put on for her. Zhou Man clapped his hand away, "I'll do it myself." Bai Shan smiled and stepped aside, but still stretched out his hand from time to help her get dressed. Zhou Man tied his hair with a hair tie, and Bai Shan immediately dipped the poplar branch for mouthwash with medicinal powder and handed it to her. Zhou Man took it, went into the bathroom to rinse his mouth, and then straightened up. Bai Shan put on the twisted veil. Zhou Man took it, and felt a lot more comfortable. She wiped her face and sat in front of the dresser, wiping her face while watching Bai Shan comb her hair. "You're weird today." Bai Shan was unconvinced. "Didn't I thrush your eyebrows and make up for you before?" "But you weren't so careful," Zhou Man doubted him. "Could it be that you asked me for something?" "No," Bai Shan said while brushing her hair, "I haven't been by your side these days. I feel sorry for you, so I just want to be nice to you, okay?" "Okay," Zhou Man raised his head, "then comb my hair." Bai Shan's craftsmanship is really not very good, so in the end, Mei came in to take over, fix Zhou Man's hair, put on jewelry, and then the two went to the dining room. Xiao Qian and Yin Or were both in the dining room, and they were talking. Xiao Qian has already eaten it, and the reason why he stayed here is to see how Zhou Man's appetite is. Is there anything he wants to eat at noon? But when I saw Bai Shan and Yin Or now, I felt that they were thin, so I cared more about the two of them. "Tell me what you want to eat, and I will cook it for you at noon." Bai Shan said that he was not picky eaters at all, and Yin Wei also said that he was fine. Zhou Man looked away from Yin Or's face, took a bun, and said, "I think they look good, they should be really good, sister-in-law, you can just do something for them." She paused and said, "It's better to be light." Speaking of this, Bai Shan turned his head and said to Zhou Man, "I asked someone to find a soup spring in Bihai County. It's not big, it's a wild field. I've asked people to circle that place, and all the fertile places around are open to grow vegetables. We should be able to eat fresh vegetables this winter." Bai Shan said to Yin He, "I'll have someone build a separate courtyard there. Would you like to stay there for a while when it's colder?" Yin Or smiled and said, "Give it to the princess, I'm in good health." No wonder, his body is far worse than Mingda's. Zhou Man took a bite of the steamed bun. The skin was thin and the filling was big. Just one bite, a small amount of juice flowed into her mouth, and it was eaten into her mouth along with the salty aroma of the meat, and it was not greasy at all. Zhou Man narrowed his eyes and was overjoyed, and said to Yin He, "If it's too cold, go, Bai Er and princess will also go." That other courtyard was built by craftsmen sent by His Majesty, and consists of small yards. Yes, it is very private and convenient, without disturbing each other, and it was originally built for you to recuperate. Bai Shan nodded, "You are tired and stay here to accompany our husband and wife. Since I told my family that we are here to recuperate, what we say should be worthy of the name." In order to build this courtyard, Bai Shan not only spent money to buy the mountain from Bihai County as a wasteland, but also spent a lot of money to buy stone and wood buildings, which was the biggest private expense they spent in Bihai County. Now that it's built, it's better to make the best use of it. Yin Or raised her eyebrows and asked, "Then are you going?"